My little uncle, a person as unattainable as a flower on a high mountain, got married. At the wedding, I found myself attracted to another, high mountain flower, Eden Edison, standing 185 centimeters tall with a buzz cut. He stood out among a bunch of young aristocrats. My friends pushed me forward, and I hesitantly asked, "Can we add each other on Weshit?" As the crowd cheered me on, he extinguished his cigarette and smiled lightly. "You're too young." My little uncle got married, and it was a celebration for everyone. Our high mountain flower finally stepped down from his pedestal. My mom was nearly in tears, saying it was a miracle. I was reluctant to attend his wedding, because I had been scared of my little uncle ever since I could remember. He always wore a cold expression, wasting his handsome face. I heard the woman marrying my little uncle was about my age, and I couldn't fathom why she would be interested in him, as there was an 8-year difference. Sure enough, love is truly great. Age gaps don't seem to matter after all. My mom joked, "You've never experienced the hardships of love, so you don't know its flavor." What's wrong with being older? Older folks know how to cherish others. Don't be fooled by your little uncle's cold demeanor. Even someone like him must cherish that girl immensely. At the time, I was picking out a dress for the wedding, and I scoffed. Even if I haven't tasted the bitterness of love, I wouldn't like an older guy. If I were to date someone like my uncle, who is so cold, I worry I wouldn't be able to handle it. Little did I know, my words would come back to bite me so quickly. The wedding was lavish, filled with prominent figures, but my gaze kept uncontrollably drifting to one person. He was a particularly charming man. His suit hung casually on him. Someone across from him was speaking, and he stood quietly sipping his drink, occasionally nodding. I was irresistibly drawn to him. One of my friends nudged me with her elbow and said, "What's wrong, Ruth Hal? Are you enchanted by that guy?" I snapped back to reality and blurted, "Whoa, I think I might have really met a captivating guy." My friend followed my gaze. "Who are you interested in?" I lifted my chin and said, "The tallest buzz-cut guy. He's incredibly handsome, but he seems so intimidating." My friend looked shocked. "No way. You can't mean Eden Edison." "Eden Edison? Do you know him? Seriously, you don't know him?" "Ruth Hal, he's quite famous, and your little uncle's company is partnered with him." "How could you not know that?" I felt a bit guilty as I explained, "I've always been afraid of my uncle, so I've never really been interested in him, or who he partners with." I raised my glass and glanced at Eden Edison again, and again. "Does he have a girlfriend?" My friend smiled knowingly. "He's notoriously unattainable. No girlfriend." I swirled the red wine in my glass and casually asked, "How old is he?" "He's the same age as your uncle." I paused for a moment, then mumbled, "That's 8 years older than me." Lost in thought, I was suddenly pushed in front of Eden Edison by my mischievous friend. "Ruth Hal, if you like him, go for it, don't hold back." I almost bumped into his chest. He was really tall. Steadying myself, I stood directly in front of him. The aura around Eden Edison overwhelmed all my senses. I felt so nervous that my face began to flush. He glanced at me, raised an eyebrow, and asked lightly, "Is there a reason you're here?" All eyes turned toward us. I steeled myself and stammered, "Hi, can I add you on Weshit?" As soon as I finished speaking, the crowd erupted with laughter. He looked at me and chuckled softly. "How old are you?" I feigned calmness, staring at my toes, afraid to meet his gaze. "I'm 20. He raised his chin and chuckled, extinguishing his cigarette, his tone teasing, "You're too young." The crowd cheered even louder. I lowered my head more and more. He glanced down at my blushing face. "Tsk." A barely audible sound escaped him. Then he kicked the guy who had been heckling the loudest. "Quit bullying her. The little lady is shy." That day, I fled in embarrassment, having become the subject of the biggest joke of my 20 years. What's the big deal? He's just a good-looking guy, right? Just a good-looking guy with a buzz cut, right? Just a stylish guy I admired. Right. I wasn't really that intrigued. But he really was charming. It was the first time I had met someone who looked so good in a suit yet had such a relaxed demeanor. Perhaps he was just too well known in social circles. I didn't even have to inquire too deeply to know so much about him. Eden Edison was the famous, smiling tiger of the business world. No matter how cautious I was, I couldn't measure up to him. The gap between us was too vast. So I thought that my fate with him ended there. Little did I expect to run into him again at a bar. I certainly didn't intend to be so embarrassing that day. It was a classmate's birthday, and we were invited to a high-end rose bar, maybe to show off our youthful age of 20, or perhaps not wanting to feel belittled by those who had been out in the real world for years. My dorm sisters and I donned our best outfits. I curled my hair and put on a long black strapless gown, big waves and red lips. My roommate said I looked very sexy. I was excited to go, but to my surprise, a few middle-aged sleazy men started harassing me. On my way to the restroom, I accidentally bumped into a drunken middle-aged man. There were 4 of them, and right when I was about to insult them, their expressions turned lewd upon seeing my face. One beer-bellied man scanned me up and down. Oh, a new little sister. I maintained a stern expression. Excuse me. As I tried to sidestep him, another greasy man blocked my path. You think you can just walk away after bumping into someone? Hey, little sister, you're being rather rude. I raised an eyebrow, maintaining a blank expression. Sorry, didn't mean to. I was about to leave when they persisted, starting to touch me. Hey, it's just a casual thing. Let's be friends. How about we share a drink? Their gazes made me extremely uncomfortable. I frowned and pulled away from them. What's wrong with you? Do we know each other? One younger man suddenly changed his demeanor. You should feel honored that Mason offered you a drink. Who do you think you are? Dressing like that must mean you wanted to attract someone big, right? I got angry. I don't care who you are. I'm not interested in any of you. He grabbed my arm, trying to pull me into a nearby private room. I tried to break free, but his grip was too strong. I couldn't shake him off, so I screamed for help. People in the nearby room heard the commotion and came to see, but no one dared to help, probably intimidated by that, Mason. I quickly realized that Mason must be someone of significance. Fear began to creep in. I called out my roommate's name loudly. My roommates rushed out and were startled, saying things like, "Who are you? We're calling the police," as they hurried toward me. But in terms of strength, the difference between men and women was too vast. Even my roommates were being dragged toward the private room. I felt helpless and regretful that I had gotten them involved. Had I known, I wouldn't have called out their names. Just as chaos unfolded, a lazy voice brought calmness to the scene. "What's all the fuss about?" I turned around and met a pair of light brown eyes. It was Eden Edison. Eden Edison had his hands in his pockets, gestured to us with his chin. "What's going on?" Looking at Eden Edison standing a short distance away, I instinctively sighed in relief. I didn't know why, but I felt he would intervene, and not be afraid of this so-called Mason. Mason let go of my hand, and looked at Eden Edison. Today is truly a rare occasion to see Eden Edison. How about a drink? Eden Edison chuckled. Let's skip the drinks. I need to take this young lady away. Mason paused for a moment, then smirked. The little lady might just not understand. She bumped into me without an apology. Eden Edison's gaze swept over me. Then he said to Mason coolly, "What do you want?" Mason looked at me with a predatory gaze. "I won't make it difficult for her. She can just share a drink with me, and we'll let it go." Eden Edison chuckled disdainfully, then leisurely pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and put it in his mouth. "It's surprising that Mason still has those thoughts at your age. I wonder if your wife knows about this." Mason's expression darkened. "What do you mean by that, Eden Edison? I've seen plenty of girls like her. Dressing this way means she's trying to attract me, doesn't it? I'm just fulfilling her desires." This middle-aged sleazy man almost made me sick. Just as I was about to defend myself, Eden Edison blew a puff of smoke and looked at him sarcastically. She can wear whatever she wants. You really should take a look in the mirror and see your own appearance. You think she would choose to attract you instead of someone like me? Mason's anger flared. Since when did Eden Edison care about these trivial matters? Eden Edison flicked the ash from his cigarette, his gaze growing cold. This isn't a trivial matter. That young lady is the niece of Kyle. You know Kyle's temperament. If I don't intervene, he might come after you later. Upon hearing my connection to Kyle, Mason's eyes showed hesitation. Eden Edison had a particularly strong jawline, and even though he was smiling, it still gave off a cold vibe, bringing the scene to a tense silence. Eden Edison nonchalantly continued, I heard you guys have been competing for properties in the East Market area lately. I figure our company has nothing going on. Why not join the competition? Mason forced a smile upon hearing this. It's my old eyes playing tricks on me. I didn't realize she is Kyle's niece. I mistakenly offended her earlier. To apologize, I'll cover her bill. Eden Edison showed Mason no respect, extinguishing his cigarette and walking over, wrapping a large arm around my shoulders, and pulling me close. I have to call her my niece now. Mason, at your age, who are you to call her little sister? You don't need to pay. I'm worried she might consider it a bad omen. I think you should stay away from this bar from now on. It's better for young folks to enjoy their time. After saying this, he shot my bewildered roommates a look, and they immediately understood. Darting to stand next to Eden Edison, Mason's expression darkened even further, but ultimately he ground his teeth and conceded, Eden Edison is right. I won't be hanging around with the younger crowd anymore. Once those sleazy men left, the atmosphere finally calmed down. Eden Edison looked down at me, his tone casual. We meet again. His magnetic voice made me nervous. I quietly replied, yes, we meet again. Thank you for helping me. I went silent and internally regretted my choices. Had I known I would be in such an embarrassing situation a second time, I wouldn't have come to the bar. Perhaps I was too quiet. Eden Edison leaned closer, asking softly, are you scared? He leaned in too close. I could smell the faint scent of smoke on him, and my heart raced. I cursed myself for being so weak and quickly averted my gaze, stubbornly saying, I'm not scared. A bunch of rude, sleazy men wouldn't intimidate me. I didn't look up, but I could feel Eden Edison's gaze on me all the while. Then he suddenly laughed. I couldn't help but ask, what are you laughing at? As I met his deep gaze, I noticed he seemed to smile playfully. It's nothing. I just think you look better with straight hair. After that, Eden Edison drove us back to school. I felt I had already troubled him enough by being a nuisance, and I didn't expect that he would remember me. So when he offered to drive us back, I immediately shook my head in refusal. No need to trouble, Uncle. It was hard for me to force out, Eden Edison, and I was almost sweating with anxiety. He paused for a moment, then chuckled. Uncle, heh. Eden Edison looked down at me, and I lowered my head even more. Didn't he just say he wanted to call me his niece? Eden Edison's eyes remained on me, and my heart raced. Cars whizzed by on the street next to us. I didn't know what to say and started counting the vehicles in my mind. The pressure from Eden Edison was overwhelming. The silent version of him was genuinely frightening, making my roommates obediently stand behind me. Suddenly, he laughed. It was short and bright. All right, Uncle will take you back to school. I wanted to refuse again, but it was as if he could read my mind, holding my neck and leading me to the passenger seat. Stop overthinking. It's on the way. Not a bother at all. I wanted to overthink, but with him explaining it so clearly, I didn't dare to refuse. My roommates hurriedly got in the car, and when I sat in the passenger seat, I couldn't help but glance at him. Damn, he was really handsome. Even just his profile made my heart flutter. This was the passenger seat. It felt like a special place. Thinking of this made it hard for me not to smile. The car pulled up at the school gate, and I finally realized that what is normally a long trip felt like it ended in the blink of an eye that night. I regretted wanting time to slow down. Who knew when I would meet him? Just before I opened the door and got out of the car, I couldn't help but turn back to look at him, and to my surprise, he turned to look at me as well. At that moment when our eyes met, it felt like I had been burned. I quickly looked away. He chuckled softly. "Is there anything else?" After hesitating for a long time, I finally whispered, "My name is Ruth Howell." I cautiously glanced up to check his reaction, and found him still looking at me with a smile. Worried he might misunderstand, I added, "I'm afraid my uncle didn't tell you my name." Eden Edison rested his chin on one hand, leaning against the steering wheel in a relaxed manner. I know." I looked at him again and said, "Also, thank you, Uncle." He casually replied, "No need to thank me. It was just a small favor." After that, I really didn't see Eden Edison again. We were not in the same social circle, so there was no chance for us to meet. Perhaps it was because he was the first person I ever had a crush on, and he felt so out of reach to me. I couldn't help but inquire about many things concerning him. He was truly amazing. Aside from being my uncle's business partner, he was also my senior, a legendary figure from the finance department. To be honest, I preferred the fact that he was my senior because it made me feel like the distance between us wasn't so great, perhaps not unattainable. Clearly, we had only met twice. Both times I was flustered, but I still couldn't help but replay the scenes of our encounters countless times in my mind. The more I thought about it, the stronger my feelings became. How strange. What should I do? I really wanted to fall deeper for a man who was 8 years older than me. An 8-year gap. I heard my uncle worked hard for several years to bridge that distance. A few months ago, I had scoffed at the idea of being in love with him, and now, all I wanted was to be his student. People can be so whimsical. Once you have a thought, it will take root in your heart. One evening during the summer break, my dad casually asked at the dinner table, "Ruth Howell, would you like to intern at your uncle's company?" I was so excited that I almost dropped my bowl, thinking I must have misheard him. Hey. Dad didn't take it seriously. It seemed like a spur-of-the-moment idea. "I thought since you're also in finance, and the person who co-founded the company with your uncle is from the finance background too, it would be great for him to guide you. It would just be a chance to learn a bit. What do you think? Eden Edison would take me." That thought filled my mind. Eden Edison would be with me for 2 months. I suppressed my joy and took a bite of food, casually asking, "Has my uncle agreed?" "I'll just call Kyle and let him know, and ask him to talk to." "What's his name again?" "I think it's Eden Edison," I casually reminded him. "Right, that Eden Edison. I'll call Kyle in a moment and let him know." "How about you try it out? You might encounter some challenges, but that's part of working life, and I hope you can get exposed to it early on." I composed myself and nodded. "Sure. I'll give it a try. I can start tomorrow." My dad looked pleased, just like me, able to endure hardships. I felt awkward. What should I do? I couldn't tell him that I was actually just looking to start a romance. The night before starting at the company, I couldn't sleep, full of both excitement and anxiety, imagining various scenarios of meeting Eden Edison. In my mind, I rehearsed what I should say when I saw him. I had thought I would be particularly nervous, but I didn't expect that I would struggle to even say a simple greeting. I wore professional attire hastily prepared overnight. Even though it fit well, it felt out of place on me. Perhaps my lack of social experience from these past years made it evident that I was not like them. My uncle expressionlessly led me into the company. After all, he was my uncle. But he didn't even give me a single piece of advice. His expression was still as scary as it had been when I was younger. What could a girl my age see in him? If it were just about looks, then she was as shallow as I was. As we walked past the first floor lobby, I could feel many eyes on me. Eden Edison's office was located past an area filled with desks, and as we walked through there, I could hear even more chatter about me. They seemed curious about my identity. I obediently followed my uncle, who brought me to the door of Eden Edison's office before leaving, telling me to go in by myself. I hesitated for a long time at the door and did some breathing exercises, trying to calm my nerves, until the door suddenly opened, and I didn't even notice. I was still murmuring to myself, "Don't be nervous, don't be nervous, he's just a guy, it's no big deal." A smiling voice came from behind me, "So, I'm that scary, hey?" The voice I had been dreaming of startled me so much that I jumped. I quickly turned around and forced out a smile. "Hello, Senior." Eden Edison raised an eyebrow. "Now you don't call me uncle," I hurriedly explained. "My dad told me that you are also from the finance department at a university, so technically, you are my senior." Eden Edison stared straight at me, causing me to feel uneasy. "What's wrong?" I asked quietly. He chuckled softly. "Nothing, just suddenly thought you seemed more polite." The teasing was too obvious, and I realized he was reacting to the way I had just referred to him as you. But what could I do? I couldn't help the heat rising to my face. I quickly changed the subject. "Why did you come out?" He replied casually. "To pick you up." He didn't mean anything by it, but just those two words made my heart flutter. My uncle brought me to the door. "Yeah, I know. For the next 2 months, I'll be disturbing you." "Not at all. It's mutual teaching." And so, under the pretext of learning, I naturally shared an office with Eden Edison. Eden Edison's office was large, decorated in black and white, giving it a mysterious vibe that seemed to fit his appearance. But what I didn't expect was that the next day, when I opened the door, I immediately spotted a light yellow desk, small and exquisite, which I instantly loved. At that moment, I couldn't care less that Eden Edison was at his black desk next to me. I ran over to look at the desk that seemed just perfect for me. Perhaps I had infected him with my excitement, for Eden Edison couldn't hide a smile either. He propped his chin on his hand and looked at me. "Do you like it?" I looked at him happily and said, "I do." "Did you buy it for me, Senior?" He replied casually. "I bought it on a whim." Bought on a whim. Yet I loved it. This light yellow desk stood out in contrast to Eden Edison's office, arranged side by side with his black desk. Every person who passed in and out of Eden Edison's office was shocked when they first saw my desk, yet no one dared to voice any objections. Because of this, I secretly rejoiced about it for a long time. When I came to my uncle's company, I originally had impure intentions, but unexpectedly, Eden Edison was very dedicated to teaching me. Contrary to his tough exterior, he was surprisingly meticulous, caring for every little detail of mine. Even though the office air conditioning was constantly on, one day I simply shivered slightly from the cold, and before I realized it, he had quietly adjusted the temperature to make it more comfortable for me. From then on, I had always known that he smoked, but ever since I started working in his office, he hadn't smoked at all. The cigarette pack remained unopened. He seemed to be able to take care of me in every way. I didn't know if he had just been in the business world for long or if it was because of his upbringing that he treated me this way, or perhaps, just maybe, a little bit was because of something special about me, that he wanted to protect me differently from how he treated others. I could not tell, and didn't dare to ask. Eden Edison really taught me many things that I couldn't learn in school. Every time he leaned over to explain something at my little desk, I would instinctively stiffen up. His warm breath brushed against my head, making my heart race even faster. I was even afraid that if he got too close, he would hear the sound of my heart pounding. I never thought that Eden Edison would take the matter of Mason bullying me to heart for so long. One day, while I was there, he answered a phone call. I didn't know what the other side said, but suddenly he gazed directly at me as I leaned over my desk. Feeling his stare, I looked up and asked, "What's up?" He tilted his head slightly, casually scanning me with his eyes. "Do you remember Mason from the bar last time?" I was puzzled. "Yes, what about him?" He raised an eyebrow at me. "Do you want revenge?" I instantly gritted my teeth in hatred. "Of course." Eden Edison smirked, looking right into my eyes, but addressing the person on the other end of the line. He said, "My little girl says she wants the building that Mason wants. We will take it, so get the people ready. On the day of the bid, we will all go." At that moment, I froze, speechless, staring at him as if I were struck by lightning. His confidence was so evident that it was unexpectedly reassuring. At that moment, it felt like my heart had been jolted awake. He referred to me as my little girl, and just like that, he said he would take Mason's building. What should I do? I was falling deeper. My admiration for him was almost impossible to hide. On the day of the bid, I was exceptionally nervous because besides Mason's company and ours, there were other firms participating as well. Before we joined, Mason was the company with the highest chance of winning. Sitting up straight at my place, I was dying of nervousness. Eden Edison sat down beside me. Nervous. I immediately sat up straighter, both shaking my head and nodding at the same time. Eden Edison chuckled softly, leaning slightly back, casually resting his hand on the back of my chair. "Don't be nervous. With me around, you won't lose." He was already tall, and with his hand resting on my chair, it felt like he was marking his territory, providing me with immense security. My anxious heart seemed to inexplicably calm down. This bidding allowed me to once again witness Eden Edison's excellence. He handled the situation with such ease that Mason's company, which had initially been the one with the best chances, didn't expect to be challenged by us. Mason looked at us, furious. Eden Edison stood casually, wearing his suit with a relaxed air. Before I could react, he slipped one hand into his pocket and grasped my wrist with the other, leading me toward Mason and his group. Eden Edison's hands were particularly handsome, with long, fair fingers. I could feel the thin calluses on his hand brushing against my wrist, making it tingle. As we approached Mason, I noticed his expression darkening. Eden Edison smiled at him. "Mason, long time no see." Mason glanced at me, then at Eden Edison, and gritted his teeth. "Eden Edison, you're really something, aren't you? Feeling proud, heh? Here to greet me on purpose." Eden Edison smirked. "It's just a small building. It's not worth being proud of. I was just worried that you might forget about us, so I came to say hello." While saying this, he suddenly raised my hand and placed it on my shoulder. "Ruth Hal, say hi to Mason so he can keep his eyes open and not offend everyone." Eden Edison's tone had a teasing lift at the end, and I immediately understood, brightly exclaiming, "Hello, Mason." Mason stared at me with a face that looked like he'd eaten something foul. "Fine, you win this time," he said, storming off with his group. Eden Edison suddenly looked down at me, asking, "Feeling good?" I looked up at him, unable to hide the smile on my face. That felt great. Seeing the light in my eyes, Eden Edison suddenly looked awkward, turning his head away as he walked ahead. "Let's go. I'll give you a ride home. It's on the way." I didn't know if it was from that day forward, but it felt like things between Eden Edison and me started to shift. An invisible barrier seemed to exist between us. I hadn't expected the day we would break that barrier to come so soon. It was an ordinary day, when a beautiful woman came into Eden Edison's office. She gave me an inexplicably familiar feeling, but I couldn't recall where I had seen her. All I knew was that she was exceptionally pretty, around Eden Edison's age, and they looked great together. It seemed that she and Eden Edison were very familiar with each other, speaking in an especially intimate tone. They even mentioned me. "Oh, what's up with this desk? Did you get it specifically for her? Looks like someone has taken a shine to her." Eden Edison's tone was very nonchalant, Not at all. She's just a kid, Kyle's little niece. It's only right to take care of her. The woman laughed lightly. Bullshit. That's not your style at all. You've gone above and beyond to help her out. Might as well just admit it. I swear I had no habit of eavesdropping, but it was purely coincidental that I happened to be standing outside the door, just as I was about to go in. As the woman continued asking questions, I grew more and more anxious, my heart racing. Eden Edison's low voice rang out from inside. She's too pure. I can't bear to let her get involved in my world. His tone was so calm that I couldn't tell whether he was serious. Unable to hold back, I pushed the door open. The woman was startled by my sudden entrance. Her eyes filled with awkwardness as she looked between me and Eden Edison before nodding at him and leaving. Eden Edison gave me a quick glance, a moment of discomfort flashing across his face, but then he resumed his usual cheerful demeanor. You're here. I didn't respond, just gazed at him fixedly. Suddenly, as if I had made a decision, I asked him, do you like me just a little bit? Eden Edison didn't expect me to ask this, and for a moment, he was taken aback. His eyes, still smiling, replied, yeah, just a little. He admitted it so freely. Then why can't we be together? Eden Edison stood up, hands in his pockets, locking eyes with me. You're still young, Ruth Hal. I'm not one for long-term commitments. This feeling may not last long for me, so I can't be a beast. I didn't speak. He continued, you're young and beautiful. My world isn't suitable for you, and I can't be certain whether I truly like you, or if it's just a passing fancy. At my age, liking someone is not a necessity. I'm used to being alone. I listened silently, gazing at him quietly. Eden Edison wasn't impatient or urging me to speak. He simply waited for me to continue. The truth is, I didn't understand his reservations and considerations, but everything he said made sense. I had no rebuttal. I felt as if this was an explanation for my unrequited love. I nodded at him. All right, I understand now. Eden Edison, you're right. I'm still young. There are plenty of other fish in the sea. I, Ruth Hal, am not someone who can't let go once I grab hold of something. Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 months. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused. He seemed to want to say something, but I wasn't sure if I was mistaken. There was a fleeting look of confusion on his face. Before he could respond, I turned around and walked away, leaving Eden Edison standing there with his hands in his pockets. He stayed there watching me as I never dared to turn back, even though I spoke confidently. The moment I turned away, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Damn, I felt so sad. I've barely even started, and I'm already heartbroken. After that day, I stopped going to my uncle's company. When my dad asked, I told him, school is about to start, and I need to take a break to prepare for it. My dad agreed immediately and called my uncle, not realizing that Eden Edison was right next to him. Once my dad found out, he insisted that my uncle hand the phone to Eden Edison so I could express my gratitude. When the phone was handed to me, I froze for a few seconds before bringing it to my ear. Hello, on the other end. I heard a familiar voice. Yes, I'm listening. My body tensed up, and my free hand unconsciously tugged at my clothes. His steady breathing came through from the phone while I was nervous as hell, but he remained so relaxed. I braced myself and managed to say, thank you. It seemed like he smiled on the other end. He replied, you're welcome. I took a deep breath, quickly said, yeah, and hung up. I should have figured it out much earlier. I had a crush on him, not the other way around. From the very start, I was destined to be the losing side. He was so exceptional. Why would he ever like someone like me? These past 2 months felt like a dream, and it was time for me to wake up. Eden Edison navigated effortlessly through everything, while I felt like a little deer lost in the fog, moving forward clumsily out of curiosity. It was time to return to the starting point, so I shifted my focus back to my university life. trying hard not to think about him. I actively participated in every campus activity, thinking that if I ever encountered Eden Edison again, I might be able to face him casually without any awkwardness. But I was wrong. The school's anniversary celebration invited outstanding graduates from previous years. Eden Edison was on the list as a finance major superstar. That day, he sat in the front row, while I performed the closing act with a male dance partner, wearing a pale yellow dance dress with my long hair cascading down. We danced a duet. Eden Edison's gaze was fixated on me, and his intense concentration made it hard to ignore. I bowed naturally to thank the audience, but deep down, I knew I almost misstepped in the rhythm. The applause from the audience was thunderous, but I could only see Eden Edison in the front row, still dressed in a suit yet exuding an air of casual confidence. Backstage, as I was getting ready to leave, I noticed Eden Edison waiting at the door with a bouquet of flowers against the wall. I felt nervous but took a deep breath and pretended to be indifferent as I called out, "Uncle." Eden Edison looked surprised and seemed to have been about to say something, then paused for a moment in silence because of my address. I asked him, "Is there something you need?" He smiled and said, "You look beautiful today, so I thought I'd bring you these flowers." I flatly declined. "No, my dance partner will bring me flowers." Upon hearing that, his eyes dimmed momentarily. I didn't quite catch it as my dance partner came running over with the flowers. Upon seeing Eden Edison, he asked me with confusion, "Ruth Howell, who is this?" I explained, "This is my uncle." My dance partner nodded to show he understood and immediately greeted Eden Edison, "Hello, Uncle, I'm Ruth Howell's classmate." Eden Edison scrutinized my dance partner for a moment before regaining his usual nonchalant demeanor, and handing the flowers to me. "Take them. Flowers are never too many." As he turned to leave, he paused and looked back, smiling, "You danced really well today, little niece. You were especially beautiful." Since that day, Eden Edison and I hadn't been in touch for a long time. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but I felt like I kept seeing cars that looked like Eden Edison's drive past me. Our lives seemed to have returned to normal, and I was getting more suitors. Yet I still remained single. I had stopped trying to find out news about Eden Edison. Perhaps he had already gotten married, considering I had already graduated from university. The next time I saw him was at my uncle's daughter's first birthday party. My uncle was overjoyed to have a baby girl. Despite being a generally reserved person, he was laughing like a fool while holding his daughter, calling her "little sweetheart." His son, born 2 years earlier, didn't get mentioned at all during the celebration. Everyone who could be named in our circle was invited to the birthday party. My mom said my uncle wanted to show off to everyone he knew. I attended the party holding my mom's hand. Over the years, many people told me that I looked better with curly hair, but I stubbornly never curled my hair, no matter how much they urged me. Even now, I still have my long, straight hair, which nearly reaches my waist. There were many people at the party, but I spotted Eden Edison at a glance. It wasn't fair. He showed no signs of aging and looked just as incredibly handsome as the first time I saw him. It seemed he sensed something, turning to look at me, the glass in his hand pausing for a moment. When our eyes met, it felt as if I had been scalded, and I was the first to look away. I thought his eyes were so deep that they exuded such profound emotion. That must have been why I felt such intensity when I looked into them. I tried to suppress my feelings and avoided interacting with him throughout the party, but then, I needed to use the restroom. Unsurprisingly, I stumbled upon them again. In the hallway around the corner, my uncle and Eden Edison were leaning against the wall, smoking. My uncle suddenly said to Eden Edison, "After all these years, what are you still waiting for? Don't let your pride get in the way. My little niece is easy to please. She's just a girl, so pathetic." Eden Edison, "Can't you manage this?" This was the first time I heard my uncle curse, and I was so surprised that I almost gasped. Eden Edison responded helplessly. The girl is still avoiding me. She's probably still mad at me. My uncle laughed. Come on, has it really been a few years? If you're feeling cowardly, then stop making excuses. Don't try to be stubborn. You'll likely have to call me uncle when you see me again. It feels a bit ominous just thinking about it. Well, I'd have to have that chance to call you uncle in the first place. You don't think I want that? I've been dreaming about being your nephew-in-law for years. Eden Edison puffed out a smoke ring and sighed. Who would have thought that love could be this engrossing? Harder to quit than smoking. My uncle scoffed. That's what you get for bringing it upon yourself. He patted Eden Edison on the shoulder. All right, I've got to go check on my little princess. As he walked toward me, I was so engrossed in listening that I wasn't fast enough to avoid him, leaving me exposed. Seeing me, he smiled slightly and said to Eden Edison, "Looks like you're going to have to call me uncle soon. You heard that? Wait there a minute while I get rid of the smoke smell." Eden Edison was the first to break the silence. And so, we stood there, a good distance apart. I didn't know why, but looking at him made me feel inexplicably wronged, and my words came out sharp. "I'm not deaf. Of course I heard you." Eden Edison didn't expect me to respond like this and couldn't help but chuckle softly. "Yeah, I know." After a brief silence, Eden Edison spoke again. "So what do you think?" I looked at him defiantly and said, "What can I think? You said yourself that this relationship for you won't last long." Eden Edison gazed directly at me. "Ruth Hal, I regret it," I retorted. "But once something is said, it can't be taken back. You said I'm too innocent, that we're not in the same world." Eden Edison took a step closer, and for the first time, I saw that he had a look of remorse on his face. "So I was wrong. Don't laugh at me. At my age, I've never been in love. I mostly just didn't find anyone I liked. So this feeling is too unfamiliar for me." Oh, seeing my indifferent expression, Eden Edison became anxious. "Ruth Hal, can you give me a chance?" I forced myself to suppress my laughter, and replied without expression, "Do you want it?" Eden Edison gazed at me intently. "I do." "Then it depends on your performance. I'm quite exceptional. I've had quite a few admirers around me lately." "So, Eden Edison, you may need to work a bit harder." Eden Edison smirked. "All right, if you can give me a chance to pursue you, I will definitely not let you down. Just don't hide from me. I'm worried I might lose my composure." His face still bore that familiar confidence, yet it was not off-putting. And what I liked was that innate confidence he had, wasn't it? The little deer, out of curiosity, stumbled into a fog-filled forest, charging recklessly through the mist, initially thinking it would be a futile endeavor. But unexpectedly, the fog willingly parted, revealing the breathtaking scenery that had been concealed. The end.